You are now listening to Carlie's Couch.
I'm Carlie.
And I'm Lex.
In this podcast, we discuss a wide array of topics about life and how to live your best life.
Whatever that looks like for you.
Hope y'all enjoy. This week on Carlie's Couch, we discuss shame and guilt and how they can be the culprit behind many of our bad habits.
Welcome to Carlie's Couch. Thanks for listening and happy Monday. My name is Alexia Clincy.
And I'm Carlie Carpio.
Also known as CC Fierce and Carlie Carpio, I guess.
Yeah.
And I'm also known as Lextopia, the legend of Chandler.
The one and only.
Legend of Chandler Boulevard.
Speaking of our names and things, I'm holding my mug. So if you're watching the video,
I know where you're going with that.
I'm holding my mug today. Aren't I adorable?
Carlie.
Aww.
It would have been funny if you had that same dress on, because she do be wearing it.
I do be wearing it.
We be running out of fits for this, though.
Dog.
I guess it's okay.
Every week, yeah. It's going to have to be, unless y'all going to start funding us, which
Right.
y'all can. But yes, so I'm holding this mug. We're still selling them. There's a Lexi mug, a Carlie mug, and then Los Dos mug for both of us. So you can get those at carliescouch.com and just click on shop. And they're all right there. Buy one, buy two, buy three. Mm-hmm. There's a discount code day ones if you want a little discount.
So get your mug. Quite a few of you already have, so thank you.
Send us pictures.
I'm drinking out the Buffalo Soldier Monument mug. Shout out Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, and our troops.
Shout out to
my
them.
brother. As Carlie mentioned, today we are talking about guilt and shame. But first, something that, well, actually a lot of you were pretty shameless. Is that the right word? With this question from the couch this week, because we asked, if you could be the CEO of any company, which one would you choose and why? And I feel like most of you were responsible with your answers, and so I'm kind of proud of that. Carlie, kick us off with this paragraph.
Yes. Okay. So someone said SpaceX is a good one because of the money, but Amazon would have to be it. I have so many reasons. My life is about my native people. I live my life based on indigenous inclusion. First, I would get rid of all the cultural misappropriation of every culture. Native culture is not a costume. Second, I would be donating proceeds to tribes for elder care programs, native veteran care programs, child care, housing, addiction and detox, language, cultural awareness, wildlife conservation programs within the tribes, higher education scholarship programs, general education programs, general service that are all able to help elders and those that are less fortunate during the harsh winters and the summers with blankets, air conditioning, food baskets, hygiene products, agriculture and farming, clean water and air and land research. And I would buy back lands for native people and donate these lands back to the tribes. I'm a product of capitalism, but I could also use it for the betterment of my people. It's not about what you get, it's about what you give. And then he included an indigenous proverb, a great chief dies broke.
That's right. What's his name or her name?
Asa. Shout out to Asa.
Asa 2024.
Yo,
you get your,
for sure.
You basically got your platform together for the website, so ready to vote when you're ready to run. That was a good one. The rest of them were okay compared to that. One said cheer wine or Pop-Tarts. If you know, you know. Rest in peace, that man. Another one said Apple, so they can do something cooler with the technology. I think they're doing pretty cool, but I guess there's always space for something better.
Someone else said Amazon, but they just said because they have quality service, the diversity, and that they're top notch.
Mm-hmm. I like how with Asus, he was like Amazon, so he could change the products and so he can make money. So I'm like, oh, okay.
Someone said Merck. They would minimize the profits on cancer drugs so that more lives could be saved. So shout out to them. But also, if you haven't heard of Cost Plus Drugs by Mark Cuban, he was one of the investors. And so if you have very expensive medication, if people in your family do, check them out, because my auntie's medication went from $1,200 a month to $86.
Ooh,
Same medication. Cost Plus Drugs. Check them out.
So it's already working?
Yep.
Oh, that's
out here.
nice to
So
know.
if you're, diabetic, because I know they be killing y'all on insulin, all those things, check that out, because it really is life-saving.
Yeah, that's so trash how profits affect health and healthcare in this country, aside from other things, but that's pretty sad. And lastly, we have Nike, because they have a 75% value alignment with the company. So value is important again, aside from the labor history, he said, which he was like, oh, we could fix that. But also them shoes is going to go up in price, but that's okay. Y'all obviously pay whatever for whatever. So at this point, it's I don't know. People are going to care or not care. So why not?
Yeah, but thank you for such thoughtful answers, especially Asa. We appreciate you. Every time he answers, it's something cool.
Right. I need to check his website. I know he got a website out there or something. Is his work in that space of Native?
In indigenous culture, yeah, he lives in Oklahoma.
Okay.
And so
Cool.
I know he does tribal dances. I know he does a bunch of those things. I'm not quite sure, but I know he works with some of the tribes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we're going to have to get Asa on the podcast.
Absolutely, yeah.
Does he listen or he just be answering our
I
questions?
think he just be answering our questions, but also I don't know, because some people, whenever I went
Yeah.
home to a wedding in Houston, I had 2 people at a wedding I didn't know come up to me and be like, "We love the
Hey,
podcast."
me too. It'd be like not my closest friends, but like the friends, from back in the day or something. They'd be like, "Oh, your podcast," and I'm like, "Oh, I'm glad you listen." Because
Thank
my
you.
friends is like, "What are you doing?"
Shout out to Jay and my line sisters. Appreciate y'all.
Right.
And
Anyway, thank y'all for listening. If you've made it this far today, let's get into this. Talk about guilt and shame. We talked about shame in episode 204. Which was so many episodes ago, over a year ago. And I remember in that one, though, we talked about shame and like what it is and how to like be able to identify and know, is shame present? Because I think that that's something where it's like, you might hear like, oh man, guilt and shame is holding you back. And it's like, no, it's not. I don't feel guilty about anything. I don't feel shame about anything. But when you really break it down, you recognize and can see how that is a part of the connection and a lot of times part of the healing process that you need to uncover and work through.
And so our most recent episodes, we've talked about romance and love and our owning our sexual desires. And that kind of, I guess, got my TikTok algorithm going into like, oh, she wants to hear about these things. And so that's actually kind of what sparked my thought around this. And also our episode discussion, because we were talking about the ability to be able to receive love. And then I saw a TikTok relating to how it might be guilt and shame. That might be the thing that's keeping you from receiving love, because you might not feel like you're worthy or you deserve it, or it might hold you back from receiving that kindness.
Can you break that down a little bit more? How does me having guilt and shame keep me from wanting somebody to show me that love that maybe if I was a person feeling shame, isn't that mean like I need help and more comfort from other people?
Absolutely. Great question. And so, yes, that would mean that you would need, or want, might desire more love or more kindness. But if guilt and shame I would say shame is an identity issue. And so at the level of your identity, even if you think you want something, if you don't think you deserve it, you'll do things to push it away. Like when people talk about self-sabotage or like upper limit problems or that, I think that's why they're so sneaky, because you might not, like you said, outright be like, I'm not guilty about that. I might not have shame. But if you're like deep down, you don't think you're worthy of someone to shower you with love and gifts and compliments and things, then you might feel real awkward and kind of push them away and be turned off by it whenever maybe that's something that you really want.
My last question to go into that even further too, is it shame that says I'm not worthy, or is it like, is there another step of like you feel shame about a thing that might have happened and so you don't feel worthy, or is it just?
And I'm not sure about the sequence of events, but I know that like guilt, it's not guilt, because guilt is like something that happens and you feel guilt. Shame is like, guilt is like, oh man, I messed up. Dang, I can do better next time.
I'm not doing enough.
Yeah, I'm not doing enough. Shame is, I'm a terrible person. I never do enough. I'm not good enough.
Okay. And regardless of where that came from, if most of us probably are holding on to some types of feelings that we're not quite all the way up there. Okay. Guilt and shame also, something I learned listening to another podcast episode in the last couple of weeks. This lady was talking about guilt and shame as triggers for the reward system of our bodies. So in this case, it made me think about how we talked about recently in one of our episodes, how like if you're sitting on the couch and you're like, oh, like I shouldn't be ordering this Uber Eats as you're ordering it, right? Or if you're like, while you're drinking, it's like, man, I told myself I was going to stop drinking. But then what happens, she was saying, is like you end up, in those moments drinking more. Or if you're trying to watch your eating and your dieting or whatever. And once you kind of mess up, she's like, that's a reason why you end up kind of going off the rails. Because once you start feeling that guilt and shame, now your body's like, you know what, you need to give yourself something. You need a boost. And then you do more of it. And when I was hearing that, I was like, oh man, like, I feel like that is kind of what triggers some of my behaviors in the short term, when it's like, in my mind, I know I'm saying like, this isn't what I should be doing. And yet it's the best feeling thing right then. And so I still end up doing it, even lying to myself or tricking myself into being like, okay, well, I'm going to slow down on it, or tomorrow I'm not going to do the thing or whatever. But I thought that was such an interesting thing, that in those moments, like I'll feel guilty and I'll do more of it. And so that just made me, think that now I think next time where I'm in one of those spaces where I might be feeling guilty about something I'm doing, I can kind of catch to be like, now how are you about to try to feed this? Or catch that my body wants to feed it and see if there's some kind of alternate thing to feed it with, and or doing the right thing. Like maybe I could retrain myself to like, actually, instead of ordering some dessert, let me go walk around the block. And like that'll probably technically still make me feel good, and I'll feel good for having like caught myself, so that's one of the things I thought about. But yeah, guilt and shame can kind of help you to spiral out.
Yeah, and anytime you find yourself like talking to yourself crazy, like, man, I know I should be doing this. I feel like that's a real easy way to tell if you have those issues with certain areas in your life. And so I was thinking about that because your girl wanted a pizza yesterday. I was at that part of my cycle. I was like, I need all the carbs. The carbs need me at this point. And I was like looking at the pizza on the Domino's app, and I was like, man. And I was like, no, girl, you got all that stuff in there. But then I realized I was just really hungry, and my brain was like, oh, we want pizza. But like, I mean, that would have been great too. I'm not saying you can't eat pizza. I do indulge. But like at that point in time, I got food at home. I literally have prepared for this. And I realized I wasn't even hungry afterwards.
Right.
Which felt good. Wait,
so you did cook your food?
Yes. I made me a nice little salad.
I did something similar last night because I was sitting on the sofa watching something, and I was like, right now, while I'm not starving, let me go prep my food. Because I was like, I do want that, but I know I get to the point where I'm like, I don't feel like really chopping up nothing or doing nothing. So I like chopped everything, got the stuff marinating to where it was like, oh, okay, in 20 minutes, I'm going to go back and cook. So by the time I started being like, Lex, you're getting hungry, I was like, let me go to let me go to the kitchen. And then as I'm cooking, just like I said earlier, as I'm cooking, I was like, yeah, this is much better. Like, I ain't need to waste no money that I don't have to be wasting on stuff when you have your own things here, right? So to that point, I think a big thing about that is make sure you prepped for the goals and things that you want to do differently. But also, you can catch yourself when you're starting to feel shame.
Yeah, that's so important. I think another area where guilt and shame are very sneaky and can affect us in a very negative way is money. Dollars and cents. I think that I was reading a book, You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero, but then she also has You Are a Badass at Making Money. And it was the first time I'd ever really thought about having a narrative around money and even understanding what that is. And like, for example, if you grew up thinking like, money doesn't grow on trees, you have to work real hard and show up the first person there and be the last person to leave and get money, then that's what you believe the only way to make money is. And so you have that, but also I think it's so insidious because the way we grow up and what we see, like we kind of tuck those away in our heads. So like, it becomes to a point where like you might make a lot of money, but then you spend it all and you don't have any savings because, maybe y'all didn't have savings growing up and y'all were poor. And so you want to indulge and treat yourself to stuff. And it just becomes this cycle that makes it hard to get out of.
Absolutely. And then another thing I've recognized that I felt guilt and shame around at times is as a business owner, actually doing the selling and making the money. Sometimes you kind of feel guilt and shame around like selling as if like it feels icky or, you might not be doing the things to make your business grow. And it kind of like keeps you from putting yourself out there. And I think one of the biggest ways that has kind of cleared up is just getting more clear on like exactly what you do and exactly how you do it. And, actually putting processes and stuff together is helpful. Because the key with that is like, wow, I'm recognizing like, oh, I actually don't feel proud of my work or I don't feel proud of my business. At the end of the day, that's what that is kind of stemming from because you're scared to talk about it. But like if I, and that might not even necessarily be true, right? But I can think mindset wise to be like, well, actually selling isn't icky when I'm showing you like something that can help you change. Like I've literally made millions of dollars for other people. And so thinking about it that way, it's like, oh, okay, like I'm not trying to trick you. That's your, what we were talking about earlier, like that unworthiness or imposter syndrome or whatever kind of sneaking in there. And also there's plenty of things that you can also do for yourself to feel more confident with that. But that's definitely a huge thing. Like if you have any guilt and shame around, your level of quality or your work or your business or selling, then you're definitely not going to be able to get as far with it as you probably hope to.
Man, I think that's another good, ding moment. Like if you notice patterns in your life where you consistently do not do the things you know you need to do, like consistently, like, you're not doing any type of marketing or branding for your business, maybe because there's some shame or something deep, that's keeping you from progressing forward. If you consistently don't go to the gym, but you always talking about how you want to better your body, anywhere that there's a pattern where you feel like you're unable to do the thing, I think those are good areas of your life to examine.
And sometimes we're just like, I don't want nobody to see. Like, you might not feel comfortable and want people seeing you at the gym, or even with your branding. Like, it's like, I don't want to look like everybody out there making content, and which I feel you, because it's rough online right now. Like, I'm like, God dang, like, I wish I could just see regular pictures of food and stuff nowadays. Please. But those people are making money, and like, they're selling their product, and it's up to me to be like, every once in a while, I'm like, shoot, this one kind of good, I might need to take this. But it feels weird you doing that, right? Like, it's just something about it. But you got to get over that.
Yeah, and that, like, I think the root of that is like feeling like not enough or like good enough. Like you might not feel like you're worthy of that $1 million client or those things because of deeper issues that you have with yourself. One really big area that I wanted to talk about when it comes to guilt and shame, because I think we've all been stuck here, is it can keep you in a situation where you're settling for less in relationships, in jobs, in situations where you're not being treated very well. And even like a very practical example, like if you're at the doctor's office and not asking questions or standing up for yourself, or, asking for the test or things you think, because maybe you don't think you have space to, or you have shame around like not knowing and asking questions, all of that to say there might be certain areas in your life, in any of those, where you are settling for less than you have to. And it's because you don't believe you deserve more.
Or that makes me think too, you might have shame around your own habits, or whether it's your sexual habits. When you go to the doctor, they're gonna ask you all these questions, and you be lying on the thing, like, nah, I ain't never smoked in my life, like, or I don't got no partners. Like, it's like, no, actually, maybe that shows that you have shame around some of those activities. And I don't know if it's necessarily bad, because look, one of my good friends, Kyle Leverett, always tells me when I do something goofy, he be like, they need to bring shame back, because why do you not care that people see you doing X, Y, Z or whatever? And it's like, yeah, I get that. And some things, it's like we need to watch our actions and think about the consequences of our actions. And yet, that's a good way to identify that you might have a shame if it's not something you feel like you could tell, even like a healthcare professional, because that's your life now that we're talking about. And maybe that's why it's hard for you to go get help at. And let's not talk about like maternal health and dealing with pregnancies and things of that nature, right? Where it's like you may be having shame around whatever your situation is, and that could keep you back, literally, like messing with your health. So consider that as well.
Man, and also, you also might feel embarrassed about the type of relationships you allow yourself to stay in. You might not want to tell anybody, and all of that shame can just pile up on you until it just feels smothering, and like it makes it impossible to get out of it.
Ooh, which, look, we going all off the notes, which makes me also come to the broad statement of guilt and shame blocks intimacy, because you can't be vulnerable. Like, if I can't talk to my friend, and not can't, but like, if I don't talk to my friends, choose not to talk to my family about maybe certain relationships, or if I feel like certain things are secret or whatever, those are things that I have guilt and shame around, and or people in my life can't be there for me, or we can't have as close of relationships without certain levels of vulnerability in certain spaces. So guilt and shame can definitely keep you in less intimate relationships with friends, family, relationships, etc. And then the last thing in general, like, it just makes you stuck. If you're feeling guilt and shame, because all these things we're saying is like, keeps you from. You're
gatekeeping yourself.
Yeah, yes, very much so. How guilt and shame gatekeeps your life. That doesn't make sense, but maybe we'll figure it out. But yeah, like, you're stuck, and now you're in cycles, and then I feel like that just generates more and more and more of that same feeling. And so let's talk a little bit about how we can redirect ourselves and what that cycle looks like.
Yeah, so real quick, think about all those places in your life where, like, you might be feeling really bad about yourself, or always hard on yourself, where you're telling yourself, I should, where you're struggling to be vulnerable and intimate. And then these are some of the ways to help you kind of redirect whenever you notice those things popping up. And so I would say a huge one is building trust in yourself, because a lot of the issues in our lives stem from the fact that we don't trust ourselves. For whatever reason, trauma, like not showing up for ourselves consistently, whatever's going on. And so taking baby steps to make sure you're doing what you say you're going to do, whether it's going to the gym, whether it's walking around the block, whether it's, sending in resumes if you've been looking for a job and you keep talking about you can't get one, but you haven't sent any resumes. So whatever it is, like taking baby steps to start to like build confidence in yourself.
Yeah. And even more baby steps. If you're like, well, I want to start working out, it may not be take your butt to the gym. It might be like walk up and down the steps 2 times. Think of the easiest thing that you can do and just focus on that consistency of it. If it's like, well, I know I need to be drinking less, then provide more of a different type of beverage in your house, or drink more. Say, oh, I have to drink water between my drinks, or, give yourself little rules and play around. You have to figure out what works for you, but that's usually pretty helpful in building confidence. To build confidence, you have to have consistency. Another thing is talking with a friend or a therapist. And because of what we said earlier, basically, like shame is in silence, like it thrives in silence, because this is something you don't really want to share with people. But to put a voice to it, to speak it out loud, to talk to somebody that you very much trust, or a professional like a therapist, is definitely going to help you move through that with a little bit more progress.
If you notice that you have some guilt or shame around money, first you have to kind of sit with yourself and see what your money story is. So thinking through, what are the beliefs that I have around money? That money is hard to make, that money doesn't grow on trees, that, I always feel like I'm struggling. I never have enough. If you listen to your language and the things you say, like, oh man, bills take all my money. If you listen, we're like speaking that stuff over our lives all the time. So maybe starting there. Another one, piggybacking off of what Lexi said about it thriving in silence, money, you might feel embarrassed because you have so much credit card debt, or you don't know what to do with your paycheck to try to invest it and make money. So find a professional, or find a friend, or find somebody to talk to about how to make your money work for you. Not no like scammer person, but like maybe someone you trust to help you, start a small savings account, or to help you start making small payments on credit cards.
And silence can look like avoiding that problem. So Carlie made me think about this, talking about the money thing, because half the time I just be like, well, I just ignore it, right? Like you don't even know what the situation really is. You just know it ain't great, but you just kind of avoid it, ignore it. And then sometimes just to even look at your stuff, like put your information down, and knowing what's going on can be helpful too. So that if there's things that you often avoid dealing with, or just I'd rather pretend it doesn't exist, then I think that's a clear indication of shame there as well. But with all of this, right, like this is really about our bad habits, how guilt and shame can be connected to these habits that we have. And it's a habit for a reason, because we do it and we're used to it, and it's second nature, and it's instinctual, and it's the way we may have always done things. And so it is without a doubt that we often like stumble, fall off, like, dang, I missed my day of running, or let me go ahead and get this Cold Stone, or whatever it might be, right? And in those cases, then we still have to find ways to move through that and keep going. So are there any quick tips that you have on, like, if you kind of stumble in places where you're like, shoot, the guilt and shame took over, what can we do?
Something that's helpful. One of my old managers in construction told me, like, one day I was like stressing about stuff, and he was like, how do you eat an elephant? And I was like, bro, what? He was like, how do you eat an elephant? And I was like, this got dark really quickly. I have no idea what you're talking about. And he was like, one bite at a time. He was like, stop trying to do the whole thing, fix the whole thing, be the whole thing, do all that. He was like, do what you can right now. Start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. Shout out to Arthur Ashe. Like, and so in thinking about these habits and ways to get yourself out of guilt and shame, start small. Start, like Lexi said, if it's exercise, maybe it is walking 5 minutes a day. Maybe it's just stretching. Maybe it's whatever. If it's money, maybe you put $1 in a can every day or every week or something and start saving, or you just do a budget. But like start small to where it's like the path of least resistance. It's not hard to do it, and it makes it easier for you to then build momentum.
And I think my tip would be pretty similar, if not a point B to that. My tip would be to acknowledge the whole. So for me, for example, I have a habit tracker app. So there's a couple of things I have in there. When I do them, it helps me gamify it. I click on it and it's like ding. And I can say if it's just for the week or how many times or if I don't do something, whatever, right? And so what I can see is every day, no day is 100% for the things I have in there, like 5 or 6 things. No day is 100%. And yet I can see that, I'm over 50% for the week or the month or whatever. So I can always look at the whole and be like, oh, wow, like I really made, 10 meals this week, whereas a week ago or a few weeks ago, then that would have been 0. And similarly, one of my clients was telling me the other day too, she was like, I made an accountability board, thinking that, okay, it was going to spark me to go do what I have to do. But she's like, really what it ended up doing is seeing the marks on things that I did has made me be like, oh, dang, girl, you meditated 4 times last week. You did something for yourself 4 times. So that's great. So focusing on what you did, especially if you could do that in a way that is visual for you. And also just patting yourself on the back. Like, yes, I only had 3 drinks last night. Like, it used to be crazier. So I think looking at the whole and being able to acknowledge that while you're in the midst of building consistency is a great thing to do.
I love that. So y'all hit us at Carlie's Couch this week and let us know maybe where you notice some guilt and shame in your life, or if you have some ways to build habits that can get you out of it.
Absolutely. And we hope that you feel good this week. We hope that you don't let guilt and shame take you down.
Peace.
Adios.